Hey there, it's Anna again. It's been a little while because my computer died. I am still figuring out this YouTube thing and I'm not great at doing it all from my phone. Oh hey Nellie, how you doing, girl? I thought it would be fun to take you around the property for a little walk today and find some things that we can dye fabric with. For anybody that's been following me on the blog for any amount of time, you know that I am an absolute nut when it comes to enjoying dyeing things with plants. It is just something that I enjoy so much. And for almost any backyard, if you've got any property at all, chances are you've got stuff right there that you can dye some fabric with. And there are, I mean, just a rainbow of colors that you can get right from your own backyard. I thought it would be fun to take you a walk around my 2 acres here the second week of September and just show you some of the things that we can find in September in Zone 5A. We're here in Maine, and see what we can find that we can get some color out of right here on a tiny little property. All right, let's go take a little walk. What do you think, kiddo? Okay, help me. This first one I want to show you is called Biden's Frondosa. It's also known as Devil's Beggar tick. Now, most people think of this as a nasty weed, and it does as it starts to set seeds. They're very prickly, a little bit like a burr, and they proliferate very easily. Now, I think of that as a good thing because this is my absolute #1 favorite dye thing that grows on our property. It makes a beautiful, really vivid yellowish orange color that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite colors to wear. And it's really a fun natural dye to work with. It grows easily, and I have a lot of it, which is great. I actually encourage it to proliferate around my property because I want to dye more things. So this is a really fun one, and right now, about the middle of September or early September, at least here in Zone 5A up here in Maine, is a really good time to look for this. Again, it's called Devil's Beggar tick or Biden's Frondosa. And over here by the outside of my palette wall, you've got my garden along in here, grapevines climbing over it. Here is mint, and I have an ocean of mint. And one great thing about this is that you can get a nice light green from dyeing with mint. If you add a little bit of iron, you can get anything from a sort of light silvery gray to a beautiful, really deep greenish gray color that's just wholesome and lovely and a really, really pretty color. So mint is a fun one, and mint you can pretty much use all summer long. It's one of those hardy plants that you can just grab a handful pretty much from when it first pokes up in the spring until, you know, honestly after the first frost. It's a hardy plant. I've got a lot of this, and mint is a fun one to dye with. Just over here is another one of my favorite dye plants. It's actually, these are seeds from yellow dock. There are a lot of different plants in the dock family: red dock, curly dock, yellow dock. Almost any of the seeds are going to give you a really good color. This is from yellow dock or curly dock, and you can see this is just, I'm going to strip some off, and you can see there's just a whole handful. What you want is all of these seeds, and these stand on the plant for a really long time. It's a plant that goes to seed pretty early, and once it does, and once the seeds dry, they are wonderful for dyeing with. And let me just show you something that I dyed last fall. Again, this is a shirt I have worn so often. It has been through the wash, just regular old hot water wash, cold water rinse, through the dryer. I do not treat any of my naturally dyed cloth products in any special way. I probably should, but this mama has not got time for that. And so this has just been through the wash again and again and again and again. No special treatment. And you can see it's sort of this rosy brown color that is just so lovely. It's a shade I really enjoy wearing. And those dock seeds are one of my favorite things. Those are a plant that you can find at almost any point in the year. You know, those seeds will stand right through winter. You can bother gathering them after you've got all your canning done for the season. But if you're looking for something to dye now, it's not too early to look for seeds right in September. Goldenrod here, and you can see all the bees that are just loving it. Goldenrod is another fun plant to look for in mid-September, and that will give you a really lemony, lightish yellow. It can get very vivid, and you can coax some really deeper colors out of it. Goldenrod is one of those dyes that's a little bit notorious for not being terribly color fast, and I will agree with that. Onion skin, devil's beggar tick, peach leaves are all yellow colors that last a lot longer, but the neat thing about goldenrod is that it's a lighter sort of lemony yellow. It doesn't have that sort of orangish tint to it. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more on the bright yellow spectrum, there's so much that you can do with goldenrod. And if you saw my video from a couple of weeks ago, it's a plant that it does stand for quite a long time, but if you don't have time to work with it right now, just gather all those blossoms, put them in a bag with some water, throw them in your freezer, and work with them this winter. Goldenrod. Now, here's another one. These are some little wild cherries hanging on the vine. I don't have a huge amount of these, but dark bluish berries like this, even elderberry, those can give you a really nice light purple color. And if you've got a source of something like, anything that you would generally call a birdberry, that's a dark purplish color, that's a really fun thing to work with. Those berries tend to give you a light purple dye. Queen Anne's lace is another great one. You can see this is a stage that I like to work with it. It's just starting to go to seed, but it hasn't totally floofed out and lost its substance. Right after it blossoms is a stage that I like to work with it. What that gives you is a nice light green color. It's really subtle, it's really pretty, and there's actually so many ways that you can shift this color. If you're not looking for just a subtle light green, you can actually shift it to a deeper, darker, mossy color using a little bit of iron solution. And I'll link in the show notes below how you can make your own iron solution. It's so cheap and easy. Acorns. Acorns are another great one. Actually, they're one of my favorites because they make such a warm and lovely brown color. The acorns are almost ready to start dyeing with. You can tell they're still a little bit green, and they'll actually still give you great color. You'll get slightly better color if you wait just a couple weeks until they're just about ready to drop, or wait until they drop and gather them off the ground. Isn't that pretty? I don't know if you can see well, but how beautiful and brown this is. It's a soft, warm brown color. This is a dinner napkin, and I have washed it. Again, I do not treat my dyed things with any level of care. I mean, greasy chicken, so many meals have gotten eaten with this napkin, and it just gets tossed right in a hot, water wash, cold water rinse, straight through the dryer. No love, man, no love at all. And it holds up so well. Acorn is a really nice dye. It is so color fast, and it's just really fun to work with. So those acorns are almost ready. Actually, if you look on the ground, that's perfect right there. All right, here's another one that's not what you might usually think of as a dye plant, but it actually works. I'm going to turn the camera around for a second and show you. Lichen is something that, you get these storms that come through in the fall, and after a storm, a lot of times dead limbs will come down off of trees, or even off of rocks. You'll have masses of lichen that have been growing on a rock and might get blown off. If you walk around through the woods after a storm, chances are you're going to see a lot of different kinds of fungi, different kinds of lichen that are sitting on the ground. And let me show you one right here. You'll get sticks that crash to the ground like that. And if you save and dry all this lichen, I'm going to be the first to tell you I don't do a lot of work with this because it's a much longer process. The best way that I have found of getting color out of lichen so far would be the tutorials that tell you to use urine or something like it, or you can use ammonia. Urine or ammonia, either way. Totally get yourself over the gross factor because it's a historical way of doing things. Put it with a lichen and let it sit for a year. And I mean a year. It takes a long time to coax color out of this. But what it gives you is a sort of purplish reddish color that is really different and neat, something that you don't often get out of flowers or seeds or plants. it's really different. But I find that fall, especially if you've got any remnants of a hurricane or a tropical storm that blow through, something with a big wind, keep your eyes open for lichen and give it a try. I just wanted to show you how big Devil's Beggar Tick can get. This is actually a different bush, and look at the size of that. It's huge. And here it's just covered with heads. I'm so excited to start working with this. I've got cloth that's mordanting right now, and this is going to be my dye project this week. Devil's Beggar Tick, one of my absolute favorite dye plants ever. Okay, not where you might think of finding dye stuff, but we just had our wood for the winter delivered the other day, and actually this is where I tend to get my birch bark for getting a nice light pinkish brown color. It's subtle. It's not really vivid. It's a lot like the color that you would get from a curly dock seed. The best thing to do is, if it gets rained on, wait until it's damp and just take off the entire bark right from the wood up. All of the layers have a benefit to giving you a really good color. And it's a dye that takes a while. Be prepared for this to be a 2 or 3 day process. Working with bark is not as quick as you might think, especially birch bark. But the color that it gives you is worth it because it has this pink shade to it that's kind of unique, and I think it's really pretty. So if you get your wood delivered, you know, cords of wood all chopped, take a look at what you've got for bark, because that's a great place to find birch bark. And also I find a lot of times I get a kind of lichen called usneed. I honestly don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's another good one that you can add to your lichen dye pot. And so sometimes you find some real treasures in with your cordwood. All right, here's another one you might not think of, and it's the stems of elderberry. Do you see how much color this has in there? That's going to give you a light purplish bluish color, and it's really pretty. You don't actually even need to use the actual elderberries. The birds usually beat me to mine. If I had covered these early enough this year, I actually would have had a decent elderberry harvest. I missed it, and the birds beat me to them before the berries had even turned purple. And if I did have elderberries, I wouldn't be putting them in the dye pot. I would be making elderberry syrup and elderberry lollipops and all the elderberry things. But something that you can do with the leftover stems that have all this purple in there, dye with them. Light purplish blue, it's really pretty. More Devil's Beggar Tick. Have I told you it's my favorite? Totally my favorite. Nightshade berries, not sure if you can see these well. You can see they're a dark purplish color. Not ones that you want to eat. They definitely have been linked to pretty intense gastric distress, and also even the deaths of young children. There are a lot of people who often rush to this plant's defense as well, though. It is integral to the gastronomic heritage of a lot of cultures, and I do not in any way want to disparage that. But it's one to be careful with. There are a lot of different plants that are in the nightshade family. And hey, cutie, she's not actually eating the berries, she is chomping on an acorn. Anyway, so I tend to strip the berries, dye something with them. They give a beautiful lightish bluish color. It's not really color fast. It does last for a little while, but if you treat dyed fabric the way I do, just putting it through the washer and dryer, it doesn't last a really long time. It'll last a few months in my experience, but it is pretty while it lasts. And if you're dyeing something that's very light use, you know, like maybe a fabric that you're going to put in a quilt or something like that, it is a pretty shade. Not a plant I love. I do tend to rip it out, put the whole thing in my hot compost pile so that the seeds can't spread once, you know, the compost gets hot enough. But that's another thing that you can find to dye fabric with, and it really does thrive everywhere. It's one of those plants that seems to be pretty ubiquitous. Thank you so much for coming along with me on a walk around the house today. We've just got 2 acres here in Zone 5A, Maine, and there are so many things that you can dye with. Give it another month and there's going to be even more. I find that fall and even right into early winter are great times to forage for dye materials. We say dye stuffs, to put in that dye pot and get some amazing natural colors And I just wanted to take you for a quick walk around and show you that if you've got any land at all, or a friend with land that doesn't mind you foraging a bit, again, most of these things are stuff that's just going to, the seeds, the flower heads, you're not really doing any harm as you're foraging them. It's a great time of year for a natural dyer. I'll be posting some tutorials as the weeks go by, but wanted to just take you for a quick walk around today. Hope you had fun. See you tomorrow.